You know that smell, that very specific, unmistakable mix of chlorine, old rubber mats, maybe a hint of industrial floor cleaner, and just the faint, lingering scent of stale coffee.
I know exactly the smell you're talking about.
Ugh.
It is sensory memory for millions of people.
It is the smell of the YMCA. I grew up with that smell. For me, and I think for almost everyone listening right now, the YMCA is just, it's furniture. It is part of the American landscape. It's the background noise of community life.
Mhm.
You go there to learn to swim, you play some pickup basketball, maybe you stay in a cheap room if you are backpacking through Europe.
Yeah.
It is the absolute definition of a benign, wholesome, charitable institution.
It is the red triangle. Body, mind, and spirit. It is the village people song. It is as American as apple pie, even though it started in London.
Exactly. It represents safety, it represents community, and that is why the stack of documents you brought in today is, and I do not use this word lightly, disorienting. I mean, we are looking at a history here that reads more like a John le Carré spy novel or a geopolitical thriller than a community newsletter.
It is disorienting. And frankly, it is supposed to be. The image of the YMCA, the gym classes, the swim meets, the community service, that isn't accidental. It is a very effective mask.
A mask for what?
But what we are doing on this deep dive is applying forensic history. We are ignoring the brochure and we are looking at the internal wiring. When you actually go into the archives and look at the internal communications from 1910, 1916, 1924, a completely different structure emerges.
We are calling this deep dive the secret history of the YMCA. But really, it is a story about something we call the inversion.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is the core thesis we are exploring today. The thesis is that the YMCA was structurally inverted. It was turned inside out.
Okay.
It started as a spiritual vessel designed to save souls, and it was hijacked deliberately, methodically, and with immense financial backing to become a materialist infrastructure.
And not just for making money. It wasn't just a real estate play.
No, not at all. The documents suggest it was engineered to serve as a distribution network for British intelligence and a standardizing force for Anglo-American commercial interests.
Okay, let's pause there because that is where you lose people. You say distribution network for British intelligence, and I picture James Bond running on a treadmill. It sounds absurd. It sounds like a conspiracy theory.
It does sound absurd until you look at the Wellington House report from 1916.
Yeah.
Or the Dialogue and Association Men from 1924, or the White House guest list from 1910.
Right.
We aren't theorizing here.
Right.
We are going to read the actual words of the people who engineered this shift. We are talking about a network known as the Round Table and the Pilgrim Society, effectively capturing a charitable organization to use as a geopolitical tool.
So our mission today is to trace that hijack. We need to understand how we got from prayer circles to propaganda. And just so everyone knows, we have the smoking guns right here on the table.
We do. We have the 1916 secret report from British war propaganda. We have the 1913 annual reports from China, which are shocking in their own right. We have the internal magazines from the 1920s. We have congressional records regarding the Pilgrim Society. We are going to connect these dots chronologically and logically.
Ideally, we come out the other side understanding why the gym down the street might have a much darker, much more complex history than we thought. So let's start at the very beginning, because the YMCA wasn't always a gym. It didn't start with a swimming pool.
No, not at all. And if you want to understand the hijack, the inversion,
Yeah.
you have to understand what was there before. You have to understand the original target. The YMCA was founded in London in 1844 by a man named Sir George Williams.
Tell us about George Williams. Was he a fitness enthusiast? A bodybuilder?
Far from it, he's a draper's assistant.
A draper's assistant, so he worked in textiles.
Right. He sold cloth. And you have to picture London in 1844. This is the height of the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
It is Dickensian London. The city is filthy. It is covered in smog. It is crowded.
Right.
And for young men coming in from the countryside to work in these factories and shops, it was a moral cesspool. Gambling, gin palaces, prostitution. It was a grinder for young men.
So Williams wanted to create a safe space.
He wanted to create a refuge. But, and this is critical, it wasn't a refuge for their bodies. It was for their souls. He wasn't worried about their cholesterol. He was worried about their salvation.
He called it the upper room, right? That's the phrase from the documents.
Yes, the upper room. The reference is biblical, obviously, referring to the Last Supper or Pentecost.
Yeah.
But physically, it was just a small, cramped room above the shop where they would meet.
And what did they do there?
They didn't lift weights. They didn't play basketball. Basketball hadn't even been invented yet. They met for prayer, for Bible study, for what they explicitly called soul winning.
Soul winning. That is a very specific, aggressive, evangelical term.
It is. The original constitution of the YMCA was explicitly, aggressively spiritual. It was about peer-to-peer evangelism. One draper's assistant saving another draper's assistant from the vices of the city.
So it's very grassroots, very personal.
It was intimate. It was intense. And Williams was actually very suspicious of entertainment. He thought if you made the YMCA too much about fun or games, you would dilute the message.
Right.
He didn't want a social club.
Yeah.
He wanted a revival.
So he was a purist. He wanted the spirit pure and simple.
He was. But then, as the 19th century turns into the 20th, the world changes. The British Empire is at its zenith. And a new set of characters enters the stage. They look at this network Williams has built, this network of young men all over the world, and they don't see a revival. They see infrastructure.
They see a grid, a distribution network.
Exactly. And the most important figure for our story in this transition is W.T. Stead.
W.T. Stead. No, I know that name. He is famous for dying on the Titanic, right?
He did die on the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, he was arguably the most famous journalist in the world. He was the editor of the Review of Reviews. He was the father of modern investigative journalism.
Okay.
But more importantly for us, he was a key member of the Round Table.
We need to unpack the Round Table before we go further. Give us the definition for those who haven't gone down that specific rabbit hole.
The Round Table was, and in many ways still is, a network of elite power brokers dedicated to the expansion and preservation of the British Empire. It was founded by men like Cecil Rhodes and Alfred Milner.
Cecil Rhodes of the Rhodes Scholarship?
The very same. Their belief was simple. The British system, the Anglo-Saxon culture, was the pinnacle of civilization. It was their duty to spread it, to federate the empire, and to eventually bring the United States back into the fold.
So Stead looks at the YMCA and he sees a tool for this mission.
Precisely. In his publication, The Review of Reviews, Stead began promoting a new vision for the YMCA. He argued for what he called Imperial Utility.
Imperial Utility. That phrase sounds cold. It sounds like he is talking about a railroad or a telegraph line.
It is utilitarian. Stead argued that a purely spiritual organization, a bunch of guys praying in a room, wasn't very useful for the empire. You can't run a colony on prayer circles. You can't build a global trade network on Bible study alone.
You need bodies.
You need healthy, disciplined, standardized men. You need men who speak English, who understand Western hygiene, who play by Western rules. You need cogs for the imperial machine.
So he began pushing for the YMCA to pivot.
He wanted to shift the focus from spirit to matter, from the upper room to the gymnasium. He promoted the idea of moral and social improvement.
Which sounds nice on the surface. Who could argue with moral and social improvement?
That is the genius of it. It sounds benign. But in the context of the Round Table, moral improvement meant aligning with British values. It meant becoming a good citizen of the empire, not necessarily a citizen of the kingdom of heaven.
So this is the first step of the inversion. You hollow out the religious core, the specific, difficult spiritual work, and you replace it with a social core.
And we have a perfect forensic example of how this internal debate played out. It is in the documents you have there. The October 1924 issue of Association Men.
This is the official magazine of the YMCA at the time.
Yes. And there is a piece in there that is surprisingly candid. It is a dialogue, a scripted conversation between a character named Wilson and a character referred to as the Fool.
I love that literary device. The fool is the Shakespearean archetype.
Yeah.
The jester who is the only one allowed to speak the dangerous truth to the king.
Exactly. So in this dialogue, the Fool is mocking the old way of doing things. He is arguing with Wilson about why the YMCA needs to change. He is the voice of this new roundtable modernization.
So he's the bad guy, sort of.
He's the change agent.
Yeah.
And he makes this argument that the modern world is too complex for volunteers. He essentially says, you don't let an amateur fix your plumbing, so why would you let an amateur fix your soul?
I have the document right here. Let's unpack this text because it is revealing. The Fool says, "We employ trained specialists to preach your sermons and to lead our gym classes."
Trained specialists.
Yeah.
That phrase is the death knell of the original YMCA.
Why? What is wrong with being a specialist? If I go to the gym, I want a trainer who knows what they're doing.
No, of course. But think about the structural shift. In George Williams' YMCA, the power was horizontal. It was peers helping peers. It was a brotherhood. When you bring in trained specialists, you create a hierarchy.
Right.
You create a provider and a consumer.
Yeah.
You create a class of people who know and a class of people who are served.
The YMCA becomes a service provider. It becomes a civic center rather than a fellowship.
And crucially, if you have specialists, you have to pay them. Volunteers work for God. Specialists work for a paycheck. And once an organization is dependent on payroll, it is dependent on whoever provides the money.
It changes the incentive structure entirely.
It does. And in that same dialogue, the fool admits something fascinating. He says the movement is headed backwards.
Headed backwards. What does he mean by that? Is he saying it's regressing?
He says it is headed backwards to its conception. But looking at the context, he doesn't mean it is going back to the Bible or the upper room. He means it is going back to the idea of service. But he is redefining service as material provision. We serve you by giving you a warm room. We serve you by giving you a shower. We serve you by giving you lunch. We are servicing your body.
It is a subtle sleight of hand. They keep the word service, but they change the definition from saving your soul to servicing your body.
And by doing that, they trap the member in the physical world. You go to the Y to fix your body, not your spirit. That is the inversion. But here's the problem. To build all those gyms and pools and showers and cafeterias, you need massive amounts of capital.
You need serious money.
Serious money.
And that brings us to Section 2, the capture. Because George Williams Draper's assistants didn't have millions of dollars.
They certainly did not.
Oh.
So we move to the fall of 1910. The scene is the White House.
The White House. This isn't a church basement. This is the seat of American power.
No. President William Howard Taft is in office. And it is worth noting, the archives identify Taft as a member of the Pilgrim Society.
We will get to the Pilgrims later, but okay. Noted.
Keep that in mind. He is part of this Anglo-American network. Taft convenes a special meeting at the White House. And the guest list is staggering.
Who are we talking about?
We are talking about 200 of the world's most powerful financiers. The Money Trust. Representatives of J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Guggenheims, the people who own the railroads, the banks, the steel mills.
The robber barons, the titans of industry. Why are they at the White House for the YMCA?
And Taft says to them, and I'm quoting the sentiment here, no better use can be made of the home of the nation than to host this movement.
He is endorsing the privatization of this network right from the East Room. He is giving it the highest possible state sanction.
He is.
And the result?
And in one afternoon, they raised $2 million.
Yeah, we have to adjust for inflation to understand the scale of this. That is roughly $57 million in modern value.
$57 million.
In one afternoon. Dropped into the hat.
But here's the catch.
Yeah.
And forensic history is always about the catch. The analysis of the donation records shows that this money came with strings attached, thick steel cables.
What were the strings? What was the catch?
The money was strictly designated for buildings, for real estate.
So if the YMCA wanted to use some of that cash to print Bibles or hire evangelists or support a local pastor, they couldn't.
No, not a penny. The financiers were effectively saying, we will fund your infrastructure, but only if you build the infrastructure we want. They were capitalizing the hotel and gymnasium model. They were paying for bricks and mortar, not for souls.
Why did J.P. Morgan care if the YMCA had a nice building? Was he just being generous?
J.P. Morgan was a businessman. He didn't do generous without a strategy. If you look at where that money went, it wasn't just going to YMCAs in Ohio or Kansas. A massive strategic tranche of it was targeted at China.
China, 1910. Okay, set the scene.
Think about the geopolitics of 1910. The Qing dynasty is collapsing. The Chinese empire, which had been closed off and resistant to Western trade for so long, is falling apart. There's a massive power vacuum, chaos, and opportunity. The Western powers, Britain and the U.S., are terrified that China will either descend into total anarchy or, perhaps worse for them, become a strong, independent, nationalistic power that kicks the West out.
So they want to stabilize it on their terms.
They want imperial stabilization. They want a China that is open for business, a China that buys Western goods, uses Western railroads, and borrows from Western banks. But to get that, you need a Chinese workforce and a Chinese elite that thinks like Westerners.
We need to change the culture from the inside out.
Enter the YMCA.
Ah.
Exactly. I want you to look at the 1913 annual report from Hankou, China. There's a phrase used there to describe the young Chinese men attending the Y. It calls them the shock troops of the new era.
Shock troops. That is military language. That is combat language.
It is. But they weren't carrying rifles. They were carrying ledgers. The YMCA buildings in Shanghai, Hankou, Tientsin, these were beachheads. They were Western islands in a Chinese sea.
So they were recruiting centers.
They were designed to attract the young, ambitious Chinese men, the future leaders, and standardize them.
Groom them.
Groom them. Teach them English. Teach them Western accounting. Teach them Western sports. Teach them that modern means Western.
It is soft power weaponized. It's brilliant in a very cynical way.
It is. You pull them away from their indigenous culture, away from Confucianism, away from Buddhism, away from their ancestors, and you align them with the empire of trade. You turn them into the middle managers of a Western-dominated China.
It is incredible. We think of missionaries as people spreading the gospel, but this suggests they were spreading capitalism,
Well,
corporatism.
They were spreading a specific kind of Anglo-American corporatism. And the genius of it was the hotel trap.
Explain the hotel trap. This is the economic mechanism.
Okay, so imagine you are a local YMCA secretary. JP Morgan gives you $1 million to build a massive 12-story building in Detroit or Shanghai. You are thrilled. You build it. It is beautiful.
But now I have a 12-story building and all the costs that come with it.
Right. And buildings are expensive beasts. You have heating. You have lighting. You have plumbing. You have maintenance. You have a massive staff to clean the rooms. You have overhead.
I have to keep the lights on.
So how do you pay for it? You can't rely on penny donations from prayer circles anymore. You need serious revenue. You need to rent those rooms. You need to sell gym memberships. You need to run a cafeteria that makes a profit.
I become a business. I become a hotel manager.
You become a hotelier. You become a landlord. We see this in the records. By 1925, the Detroit YMCA is absolutely obsessed with its 12-story hotel. The Liverpool YMCA is panicking about the large outlay for its gymnasium. The leadership stops thinking about souls and starts thinking about solvency.
It forces a shift in priority. It has to.
It forces it. It is what Rudolf Steiner called the Ahrimanic trap. Ahriman is the force that binds you to matter. By forcing the YMCA into this heavy real estate model, the financiers guaranteed that the organization would be permanently distracted by material concerns.
And once you're worried about the mortgage?
You can't rock the boat politically. You can't be too radical spiritually. You have a mortgage to pay.
You are beholden to the money trust.
You are captured. The capture is complete. The organization is financially dependent and structurally inverted. Now comes the weaponization.
Section 3. This is where the mask comes off entirely. Because having a mortgage is one thing, being a spy network is another.
We need to talk about Wellington House.
Wellington House. That was the British War Propaganda Bureau during World War I, right?
Correct. And we have a document here. The secret third report of the War Propaganda Bureau, signed September 1916. This is a secret document, not meant for the public. It was for the eyes of the cabinet only.
Okay, a secret internal report.
And it explicitly lists the YMCA as a distribution arm.
I am looking at the numbers here. It lists 833 YMCAs.
833 distribution points.
For British propaganda.
In the United States.
In the United States. Remember the context, 1916. The U.S. is technically neutral. Woodrow Wilson is campaigning on keeping the U.S. out of the war. But the British are desperate. They're getting slaughtered in France.
They are bleeding dry in the trenches of the Somme. They need American bodies. They need the U.S. Army.
So they need to change the mind of the American people.
They need to shift public opinion from isolationism to intervention. But they know that if the British government hands an American guy a pamphlet saying, "Germans are monsters, please help us," he will be skeptical. He will see it as foreign meddling.
Of course. But if he finds that same pamphlet on the table at his local YMCA...
He trusts it. It's the Y. It's the red triangle. It's Christian. It's wholesome. It's where his kid learns to swim.
So they laundered the propaganda through a trusted charity?
Exactly. The report boasts about this method. It says the literature bore no evidence at all of any connection with the British government. It was unofficial propaganda.
So you have American men walking into the Y to play basketball or get a coffee, and they're consuming narratives crafted by Sir Gilbert Parker and British intelligence.
Narratives designed to make them hate Germany and love Britain. Narratives designed to prepare them for war. And they had inside help. We mentioned a name earlier, P. Whitwell Wilson.
P. Whitwell Wilson. He was the writer for Association Men, that YMCA magazine we discussed.
The guy who wrote the dialogue with the fool.
Right.
Well, P. Whitwell Wilson wasn't just a writer. He was a British member of Parliament. He was deeply connected to British intelligence. He was effectively an agent of influence working from inside the YMCA's media division.
Oh.
He and Sir Gilbert Parker were shaping the political worldview of American soldiers and young men under the guise of moral uplift.
And this wasn't just rogue agents. The government was involved. This brings us to the Huts.
The Huts. This was the masterstroke. President Wilson Woodrow Wilson granted the YMCA official standing in the Army and Navy.
Official standing. That is a legal status. What does that mean in practice?
It gave them access. It allowed the YMCA to set up huts, these recreation centers,
Yeah.
right in the military camps, right on the bases. No other civilian organization had that level of access.
I have seen pictures of these huts. They look like canteens, places to get coffee, write a letter home, play checkers.
That was the bait. The coffee and the donuts were the bait. The hook was the indoctrination. The expert analysis suggests the YMCA hut wasn't just a place to relax. It was a captive environment.
A captive environment.
Think about it. You are a soldier. You are bored. You are far from home. You go to the hut. It is the only place to go. And what is on the walls? Posters for the Allied cause. What is on the reading rack? Pamphlets from Wellington House. Who is running the place? A specialist trained to guide your thinking.
It is a Trojan horse.
It is a Trojan horse invited in by the president. They were moving American neutrality toward war intervention, one cup of coffee and one pamphlet at a time. And because it was the Christian YMCA, nobody questioned it.
It is incredibly efficient. You don't need to infiltrate the army if you're invited in to run the rec room.
Precisely. You own the leisure time of the soldier. You own the literature he reads when his guard is down. And that is when propaganda is most effective, when you don't think it is propaganda.
This raises a huge question. Who is pulling the strings here? We have J.P. Morgan funding the buildings. We have British intelligence supplying the literature. We have Taft and Wilson opening the doors. Who is the architect?
Let's zoom out. We have to look at the broader network. The documents point to two key groups, the Pilgrim Society and the Round Table.
Section 4, the broader network. Let's talk about the Pilgrim Society, founded in 1902.
The stated goal was fostering goodwill between the U.S. and Britain. Dinners, speeches, toasts to the king and the president. Very high society. Very respectable.
But the investigative sources like Lillian Scott Troy in 1912 and Congressman Thorkelson in 1940 paint a much different picture.
They argue the thesis was the recovery of the United States as a British colony.
A British colony. In the 20th century, we fought a war to get away from them. That sounds insane.
Not a colony in the sense of redcoats and taxes, a corporate colony, an economic and cultural colony. The Pilgrim Society represented the elite intertwining of British and American finance and aristocracy. They wanted a corporatist imperial federation.
I have a source here from 1912, an article in the San Francisco Leader by Lillian Scott Troy. She exposes a 24-step Pilgrim Society corporatist imperial federation strategy.
That is a mouthful.
It is. But it outlines a strategy of merging the corporate interests of the two nations to create a de facto world state run by the Anglo-American elite, control finance, control the press, control education, and control the character-building institutions.
Like the YMCA.
Yeah.
And Andrew Carnegie plays a role here too, the library guy.
Carnegie is essential. We think of him as the generous librarian, the guy who gave everyone access to books.
Yeah.
But the documents, again, citing Lillian Scott Troy and Congressman Tinkham in 1933, suggest his funds were used for denationalization.
Denationalization, that is a heavy word. Breaking down a nation's identity.
Breaking down American nationalism to prepare the way for this world state.
The international mind alcoves, I see that here. Yes. The international mind alcoves in the libraries, often connected to the YMCA libraries. The accusation was that these were designed to kidnap the mentality of American youth, to shift their loyalty from the United States to this broader international British-led order.
It connects back to the shock troops in China. It is the same model. Use the institution, the library, the gym to standardize the mind, to make the American kid and the Chinese kid think like the British imperialists.
This raises an important question. Why? Why were they so obsessed with this Anglo-American union? Was it just money? Was it just power?
Well, there is this really weird spiritual dimension in the historical archive, something called British Israelism.
Yes, and this is the part that is hardest for modern listeners to grasp because it sounds...
Oh, kooky. It sounds like a fringe cult.
But in the late 19th and early 20th century, this was a serious intellectual current among the Anglo-American aristocracy.
Yeah.
You got admirals, generals, lords, and financiers who subscribed to this. This wasn't some back alley belief.
So what is British Israelism, in a nutshell?
It is the belief that the Anglo-Saxon race is actually the lost tribes of Israel.
Wait, what? So the British are the chosen people?
In their minds, yes. They believe they were destined by God to rule the earth. They called the British Commonwealth the kingdom of God on earth.
That puts a whole new spin on imperialism. That's not just geopolitics, that's theology.
It does. It frames the British Empire not just as a political entity, but as a divine mandate, the new covenant. This pseudo-theology justified everything. If you believe you are establishing the kingdom of God, then standardizing young men in China or America isn't oppression, it's salvation.
In the United States, where did we fit in?
We were Manasseh.
Manasseh.
In the British-Israel typology, Britain was Ephraim, the company of nations, and the United States was Manasseh, the great people. We were the lost brother. We were part of the family who had foolishly run away.
So the Pilgrim Society's goal of reunion wasn't just political. It was biblical. It was prophecy to them.
In their eyes, yes. The recovery of the United States was about healing the breach in the chosen people. It explains the fervor. It explains why Carnegie would spend millions to denationalize Americans. He wasn't trying to destroy America. He was trying to redeem it by bringing it back into the fold.
Kidnap the mentality of American youth. That was the charge. But they saw it as saving the mentality.
Exactly. They were saving us from our provincialism and bringing us into the imperial destiny. It was a holy mission.
So let's try to synthesize this. So what does this all mean? We have covered a lot of ground. We have a machine here, a social engineering machine.
Let's look at the gears of that machine.
Finance, the capture. The 1910 White House meeting, you hook the institution on money and real estate. You create the hotel trap.
Got it.
Gear 2, propaganda, the weaponization, the 1916 Wellington House report. You use the network to distribute your narratives and silence the opposition. Gear 3, personnel, the inversion, the 1924 Association Men Dialogue. You replace the spiritual volunteers with secular specialists who answer to the payroll, not the spirit.
And the output of the machine. What does it produce?
The output is a standardized man, a man who is physically fit enough to work in the factory or fight in the trench, a man who is mentally aligned with the interests of the empire, and a man who is spiritually hollowed out.
Hollowed out.
Cut off from the upper room. That is the tragedy of it. The original open door to the genuine spiritual life, the direct connection to the divine that George Williams wanted, is closed. It is replaced by a counterfeit.
A civic center instead of a sanctuary. A gym instead of a chapel.
It is the Ahrimanic trap applied to social life. You bind the human spirit to the material world. You give him a gym, a shower, a hotel room, and a magazine. You make him comfortable, you make him efficient, but you cut him off from the divine.
It effectively trapped young men in the material world, serving the empire's commercial and military needs. It made them efficient instruments of the state, rather than free spiritual beings. That is heavy. It really changes how you look at a treadmill, doesn't it?
It should. It shows that institutions are rarely static. They can be captured, they can be hollowed out, and they can be weaponized.
You know, there is a quote from one of the sources, and men wept, that really stuck with me. We have no obligation to save the British Empire.
That is a powerful sentiment. The archive suggests that institutions we trust as purely charitable may actually be the engines of a world state designed decades ago. We are living in the architecture they built.
The efficiency of this scheme is what gets me. You don't need to conquer a nation if you can own its character-building institutions. You just shape the character of the people to fit your needs.
And you do it while they think they're just playing basketball. That is the ultimate sleight of hand.
It is control through comfort.
It is. It is what we might call soft totalitarianism. You don't need a boot stamping on a human face forever if you have a specialist guiding their leisure time.
Well, on that provocative note, we are going to wrap up this deep dive. I want to encourage you, the listener, to look at that red triangle a little differently next time you pass it. Is it just a gym? Or is it a monument to a century-old geopolitical strategy?
The history is there in the documents. You just have to be willing to read the fine print.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We will see you next time, where we will unpack another hidden history. Stay curious.
And stay critical.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Wait, hold on. We are not done yet. Don't cut the feed.
You have more.
I do. I feel like we breezed past something in the ideology section that is actually the key to understanding the modern world. We talked about standardization.
Yes. It is a recurring theme, a key objective.
But I want to drill down on why that matters so much to these people. We aren't just talking about making sure everyone speaks English. We are talking about a fundamental shift in what it means to be human. Well, look at the contrast. George Williams's upper room was about individual salvation. It was highly personal. It was about your relationship with God. It was unique to you. It was vertical.
Correct. It was about the individual soul facing the divine, messy, unpredictable.
But the roundtable vision, the shock troops, the specialists, that is about the collective. It's about the mass. It's about population.
It is. It's the shift from the individual to the statistical.
The statistical, I like that. Explain it.
Think about it. When JP Morgan or the Roundtable planners look at a population, they don't see a million individual souls with unique destinies. They see a labor force, they see a market, they see data points. To manage a global empire, you cannot deal with millions of unique, unpredictable individuals. You need predictability.
You need interchangeable parts.
Exactly. Industrialization applied to humanity. If every young man in Shanghai and every young man in Detroit reads the same books, plays the same sports, and believes the same propaganda, they become interchangeable components in the global machine.
So the YMCA became a factory.
A factory for human capital. And this is why the upper room had to go. Because spirituality, true spirituality, is unpredictable. It's wild. A man who answers only to God is a dangerous man to an empire.
Why?
He might say no.
He might say, no, I won't fight in your war, or no, I won't work in your factory.
Exactly. But a man who is defined by his material needs, his need for a gym, a shower, a hotel room, that man is leverageable. You can control him by controlling access to those things.
That is the aromatic trap again. You bind him to the earth.
And you make him feel good about it. That's the seductive part. The YMCA didn't look like a prison. It looked like progress. Look at this modern facility. Look at this hygiene.
It's Brave New World, Soma.
It is very Huxleyan. It's control through comfort and the illusion of self-improvement.
I want to go back to the Fool one last time. Because there is a layer of cynicism there that feels so corporate, so modern.
The 1924 dialogue.
Yeah. When he mocks the simple gospel preachers, it reminds me of how modern consultants talk about legacy systems. Like, oh, you're still doing prayer. That's so quaint. We have a metric for that now. We have a KPI for salvation.
It's the technocratic mindset. 1924 is really the birth of the technocrat. The belief that there is no problem, spiritual, social, or political, that cannot be solved by a specialist with a budget and a flowchart.
And that mindset kills the spirit.
It suffocates it because the spirit cannot be flowcharted. It can't be quantified or managed. It's an inconvenience to the system.
You know, thinking about the international mind alcoves in the libraries, we see a version of that today, don't we?
Algorithms.
Exactly. We don't have Andrew Carnegie picking the books anymore. We have an algorithm curating our feed. But the goal is the same, isn't it? To shape our minds.
To create a consensus reality, to make sure we are all angry at the same things, afraid of the same things, and buying the same things. It's standardization at a speed they could have only dreamed of.
So the International Mind Alcove is now the For You page.
In a way, yes. It is the centralization of narrative. The technology changes, but the intent to kidnap the mentality remains the same.
That makes this history feel incredibly urgent. We aren't just talking about dusty magazines in the 1920s. We are talking about the prototype for the world we live in.
That is why we do forensic history, to see the source code, to understand the operating system we're all running on.
And to realize that the code was written by people. And if it was written by people, it can be rewritten.
Or at least we can choose not to run the program. We can choose to step out of the system.
We have no obligation to save the British Empire.
And we have no obligation to live in their mental hotel. We can build our own upper rooms.
I think that is the perfect place to truly end it. We've gone deep, we've gone back, and we've brought it right to the present.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep your eyes open, everyone. Stay deep.